So there's been a lot of chatter, a lot of discussion about Pakistan, the ideologies that drive Pakistan. There's been a lot of media commentary around the comments made by Pakistan Army Chief General Munir around the two-nation theory. And then a week after that, we had the Pahalgam attack, and 2 weeks after that, India retorted with Operation Sindoor. But to really understand the motivations, the ideologies, what is it that holds Pakistan as a country, the hold of the ruling elite, whether it's the military elite or the political elite, what explains that? Because it was born out of a very unnatural concept, having a separate nation for Muslims. The fact that it has survived 75 years, of course, there is the rivalry with India. There is what they perceive as the unfinished Kashmir agenda, so on. But ultimately, if we have to try and understand Pakistan and what drives the dynamics of the rulers and the ruled in that country, there is a fascinating new book that has come out. It's called Pakistan Ideologies, Strategies, and Interests. It's written by a wonderful diplomat, Mr. Dinkar Srivastava. He's served a number of years in Pakistan as well as studying Pakistan. So thank you very much and congratulations on this book. I must confess, I've read about three-quarters of this book and I found it fascinating, not least because of the context in which it is now releasing. Surely you didn't plan to release this book at this time, did you?
Thanks for having me. This book has been in the making for 3 years, so I had no clue about
Okay.
the unfortunate event which will take place.
But the one thing is because of these tumultuous events in the last month, month and a half, and then reading your book, it sort of puts into perspective from a long-term point of view as to what this state is, how it is defined, and what has kept it together. And I think it sort of came to the fore in a way with. But let me first ask you, because you've called it Pakistan ideology, strategies, and interests. What is the ideology of the state of Pakistan?
There's no agreed definition of the ideology of Pakistan, though it has pervasive influence. The most well known exponent of this ideology was Iqbal. And Iqbal, in his famous address of 1930 in Allahabad Muslim League conference, he made 2 points. He said that in Islam, there's no division between church and the state. And second, he opposed the idea of nationalism. This was curious at a time when nationalism was sweeping across Asia.
True.
Now, these two strands, Iqbal's reason was that he said that he did not want Islam to suffer the fate of Christianity.
Okay.
He said that Reformation weakened the power of Vatican, and within the Christian states, it weakened the power of religion.
Okay.
And he did not want that fate to befall Islam.
So in
Now,
that sense, in modern Western countries, church and state are separate, whereas in Pakistan, Islam and the state are the same. It's one.
this is exactly what Iqbal said and what Pakistan is today. Now, this is the basis of the conflict in that country, because if the divine is the supreme, then that the focus of the loyalty of the citizen is not to the state institution but something else,
To the divine.
to the divine. And
No, so just explain that. So in India, for example, the sovereign rests with the people, right? The
yes,
people are the most important thing in this country, and the people's will is expressed in parliament through elections. The sovereign rests with the people, whereas in Pakistan, the sovereign rests with.
with with the divine. Now, let me quote. This is a very famous resolution, Objectives Resolution, adopted by the Pakistan Constituent Assembly under Liaquat Ali Khan in 1949. It said that Allah has the sovereignty over both lay and ecclesiastical domains. Now, this at once undermined the principle of sovereignty of parliament, which is the basis of modern democracy, and it has also undermined the minority rights. But let me just complete what I was saying, that Iqbal's conception, these two strands of Iqbal's philosophy, has created the seeds of turmoil in Pakistan, because instead of loyalty to a state institution, there's a loyalty to, you know, to the divine.
To the divine, yeah.
And the second aspect was the pan-Islamist pull. So this is Pakistan has supported these jihadi groups and that extremist philosophy across the region, and that undermined the stability of Afghanistan. It is no coincidence that Pakistan is in conflict not only with what it calls Hindu India, but also with Sunni Afghanistan and Shia Iran, because it has not accepted the basic concept of modern state system, respect for state boundaries.
Okay. No, so let me come to this whole thing about the two nation theory. I mean, obviously, it started with, as you said, Iqbal articulated it in a certain way. I don't think he used the phrase two nation. I think the first sort of expression of two nation in as many words or a separate state for Muslims was Jinnah in 1940 in what was the famous Lahore Congress of the Muslim League. Let's start from there. What was the rationale for having a separate state for Muslims? And does that rationale still hold? Because Asim Munir is using the exact same language that Jinnah used 70, 80 years ago.
You know, Jinnah gave a speech in 1940 session of Muslim League in Lahore, in which he said, Muslims are not a minority. We are a separate nation. Now, this was building ground for a separate state for Muslims, which is what the resolution asked for. And this there was an ambivalence in that resolution. The resolution talked about sovereign independent states in northwestern and eastern regions. So it was a plurality of state, not a single Pakistan which was envisaged. Jinnah tried to paper over these differences and change the language to singular noun, that is state, in 1946 Convention of the Muslim League. Now, this which was, of course, over a period of time not accepted, and this ambivalence eventually led to separation of East Pakistan. The idea of nationality remains alive in Pakistan, and that is the genesis of the problem in Balochistan.
But tell me, Ambassador, this idea of the two nation theory, certainly after 1971, after the separation of Bangladesh, that's a dead concept. I mean, at least in practical purposes, everybody can see that the idea of having a separate nation for Muslims ceases to exist when the Bengali Muslim doesn't want to have anything to do with the Punjabi Muslim or the Sindhi Muslim. Why then is that concept still so relevant? So much so the current army chief used that exact same phrase, that Hindus and Muslims are two different nations. Go remind your grandchildren of why our forefathers fought for Pakistan, the two nation theory. I mean, what is its relevance? It's a failed concept.
Exactly, it's a failed concept, but the Pakistan army, under the able leadership of General Munir, is actually going back to 7th century. Army considers itself custodian of the ideology of Pakistan, not simply defender of the national frontiers. And this suits its interests very well, because the ideology of Pakistan also implies a rejection of principle of democracy. This was built into the structure of the Muslim League, which had no mass roots. And after partition, Jinnah appointed himself Governor General, President of the Constituent Assembly, and President of the party. And the tradition was carried forward by denying the majority province, East Pakistan, its due role. And that was possible only by postponing elections. So denial of democracy was also became part of the ideology of Pakistan, which suits the Pakistan army very well. So there's corporate interests of the army built into it, but of course,
all through this time between 1940 to the birth of modern day Pakistan in 1947, when this whole two nation theory became formalized, the Muslim League, which was the political entity behind this idea, or at least the espousal of this idea, did not have political power, neither in Punjab nor in Balochistan, certainly not in the Pashtun part of Northwest Frontier Province. So where were they getting the political mileage to go ahead with this theory? Was it from the British?
Exactly. The idea of Pakistan it came from the Muslim elite of central and northern India. It was encouraged by the British, and the reason was that the British wanted to divide India. This was, look at the historical context. 1940, the war had broken out.
Yeah.
The Viceroy asked for Mahatma Gandhi's support in a meeting in 1939, just after the war had broken
Started,
out.
yeah.
And Gandhiji refused. Gandhiji said that we want clarity about the war aims, that India should get independence after the war, which he was not willing to concede. The Muslim League, on the other hand, came forth, and this was a turning point in its relations. The overriding British interest was continued recruitment for the British Army, which Jinnah promised in his speech at the Lahore session. So these two strands, that is Congress's insistence on independence and Jinnah's complicity with the British, they converged, and the British decided to support the demand for Pakistan. They were still not willing to dismember their empire. So there was still a degree of ambivalence, and that is why the Lahore resolution does not mention Pakistan.
Yeah.
But-
By name, yeah.
By name. But there's enough documentary evidence available that the Lahore resolution was actually shown by Sir Zafrullah Khan, who was a member of the Viceroy's Council, to the Viceroy, and he got its approval, and it was not shown to the Muslim League Working Committee.
So
Before it-
Jinnah made this speech, this famous speech at the 1940 Congress. The Viceroy, you're saying, saw it and gave his approval. The wider working committee of the Muslim League had no idea that
Had
he's
no-
going to
had no-
propound this.
had no idea. And there were two other, concepts. There was also a proposal by Sir Sikandar Hayat, who was the Premier of Punjab, and he presided over a unionist government which included Hindus and Sikhs also, Muslims being the dominant.
course.
He was the chief minister, prime minister. He was opposed to partition, and Punjab was the
Yeah.
most important force. So he had given an idea of a kind of union or confederacy. And this was discussed in a meeting of the Muslim League Working Committee. And Khaliquzama, who was a senior Muslim League leader and became president of Pakistan Muslim League after Jinnah's death, in his memoirs, has said that few people realize when the Pakistan demand was made. And he mentions this particular meeting before the Lahore session, where Jinnah got Sir Sikandar Hayat's idea of a confederacy killed, and
Went to this
thereafter this was
separates.
reported to, the outcome was reported to the Viceroy, who gave his blessings for this idea of
Separate
demand
state.
for a separate state.
So let's come to then the history of Pakistan. If you're saying that Iqbal had two concepts, one, there's no separation of church and state are one in Islam, and two, this idea of minorities. At the time of its founding in 1947, minorities were roughly about a quarter, a little under a quarter of Pakistan. So if the all-pervasive ideology for not just the institutions or the elite, but for the ordinary Pakistani, the citizens of Pakistan, is Islam, right? Then where does that leave the Baloch? Where does that leave the Pashtuns, the Sindhis, the Muhajirs? Because those are also identities, ethno-national, ethno-linguistic identities. Does that get subsumed by this overall identity that everyone is a Muslim?
It's a very important question. The Lahore resolution tried to impose an artificial concept of state based on religion, and it ignored the separate national or linguistic identities which preceded the creation of Pakistan. And this is the conflict which lives on. And in fact, the idea of separate nationalities was implicit in the Lahore resolution also, which talked about states, plurality, not a state. And this is what the Baloch, the Muhajir, the Pashtuns, and the Sindhis, and earlier the Bengalis talked
Yeah.
about Sheikh Hasina has compiled a political biography of her father, Mujibur Rahman. It's called The Unfinished Memoirs. And in this, Mujibur Rahman has mentioned this particular incident where Jinnah tried to post facto change the language of the Lahore Resolution, which recognized the national diversities of this region. Uh, and of course, the
But,
rest is history.
but Jinnah also made that famous speech, 11th August 1947, where he said Pakistan will be a nation for not just Muslims, but for all ethnic diversities. That's not how it quite played out, history.
This speech of 11th August 1947 made by Jinnah is held out by liberals in Pakistan as Jinnah's enlightened vision of Pakistan's future. Jinnah was a master tactician. He had led a movement based on a communal demand for partition of the subcontinent on ground of religion. You cannot, it's not an electric switch. After you have unleashed such forces to switch it back. So this was a purely tactical move, and its background is explained by Khaliquzzama in his memoirs, Pathways to Pakistan. Jinnah's last meeting in India before he left for Pakistan, he had called the senior Muslim League leaders to his residence. And these people asked Jinnah that you are leaving for Pakistan, what will happen to us? And Khaliquzzama has said that he has never seen Jinnah more distraught. So he said this was a background because Jinnah was trying to signal to India to treat Muslims as equal citizens. And in return, he was offering to treat Hindus
as equal citizens.
And Sikhs as equal citizens. Now but this was a very short-lived phrase. 6 months later, in a speech in Karachi Bar Association, Jinnah went back on his own precept and he proclaimed that Constitution of Pakistan will be based on Islamic Sharia. So this was a purely tactical move. I think the best, explanation is that Jinnah did not want influx of the remaining Muslims, 35 million Muslims,
to come to Pakistan,
to destabilize Pakistan.
Okay.
So he was concerned about stability of Pakistan, not about the welfare of the Muslims who were left behind.
I want to come to this obsession that Pakistan has had with Kashmir. Now, many view it from the prism that this is the unfinished agenda of partition. This is the only major Muslim majority province in India, and it's like the crown jewel and so on. Therefore, Pakistan will go to any extent to reclaim Kashmir. But you in your book say it's never been about land or territory. What then is it about?
No, Kashmir, there's a very interesting episode which has been mentioned by Sheikh Abdullah in his memoirs, Flames of Chinar. He has described Jinnah's visit to Kashmir in 1944. And one of the Muslim National Conference activists asked Jinnah about the wishes of the people. And Jinnah's blunt reply was, let the people go to hell. Now, this sums up Pakistan's policy towards Kashmir. It's partly territorial expansion and partly ideological, unfinished agenda of partition. That is, Kashmir should be part of Pakistan, not because Kashmiris have chosen themselves to be part of Pakistan, but because they are Muslims. Now, this is something which was rejected by people of Kashmir when the majority leader, Sheikh Abdullah, opted for India. The second comment, which was again Jinnah's comment, repeated by General Asim Munir in his speech of 16th July, he said, Kashmir is the jugular vein of Pakistan.
Correct.
Now, what does it indicate? This is a reflection of Pakistan's national interests. It is not a reflection of Kashmiri aspirations.
Correct.
It's a jugular vein of Pakistan. It's nothing to do with wishes of the Kashmiris in the matter. And it is also laying claim to a disproportionate share of Indus waters.
So let me then come to the present as we come to the concluding part of this fascinating discussion. So you have an army chief who says Kashmir is the jugular vein. Uh, the state there has sent out these terrorists and has been doing this for the last 30 years. India is now trying to change that paradigm by saying that, look, you can't just get away with these attacks. There will be a cost to pay. Now India is also morphing this distinction between state and non-state, that whoever hits non-state actor carries out a terrorist attack, we will hit the state actors. Do you think this is a sustainable? Because at some point this has got to give, isn't it? I mean, they've been using this death by a thousand cuts for 30 years. India is trying to raise the pain of using that as a strategy. Where will it snap? Where will this cycle end?
You know, the recent operation, what we call Operation Sindoor, and its counter, which Asim Munir coined, was Operation Bunya
Al-Masroos, yeah.
al-Masroof, which is a phrase from Quran about the unity of the faithful. Now, what it has demonstrated is that by the time, 10th May, it was Pakistani DGMO who called the Indian DGMO. So Pakistan was suing for peace, which means they had lost the battle.
Yes.
By 10th May, Indian Air Force strikes had destroyed Pakistani air defenses. They lay vulnerable. We agreed to give it a pause. But what it has done, it has completely demolished that Pakistani, that specter of nuclear war they held out, that any India's conventional response to sub-conventional threat by Pakistan will lead to escalation to the nuclear level. That didn't happen.
So that bluff.
So that bluff has been called. So this is a major step forward. Now, where will it lead to? We'll have to see, because you read the Pakistani media. There's a narrative of having lost the war. They are carefully creating a narrative that they have won. And this is important to shore up the sagging authority of General Munir, who's presiding over a divided house. There are rifts within the army, which was shown by the sacking of senior generals and court-martial of the former ISI chief. And the army's legitimacy itself is being challenged. So this is a very careful attempt to shore up his authority. The danger is that if you don't accept that you have actually lost the war, there will be people questioning then why.
Correct.
Why did you stop?
Yes.
And why not a fresh attempt?
Yeah.
So there is a real risk, and how the Pakistan will react and how stable their decision making is very difficult to say, because here you have an army chief who is living in the 7th century. He has assumed the role of soldier and the priest together.
No, but tell me, so as I come to the last question, so again, these conflicting and contradictory forces. You have an army chief who is now, a field marshal. He's now become the biggest chief, perhaps since, certainly since Musharraf. He was at loggerheads with arguably the most popular politician in Pakistan for the longest time. Now, that chapter is over. Imran Khan is now in this battle between Munir and Khan. Munir has prevailed. He has emerged as the victor.
It's a three-way contest between Munir, Imran Khan, and TTP. All three are trying to fight for the narrative. Who controls the narrative, the ideology of Pakistan? Because where religion holds the key to legitimacy and political power, whosoever controls this narrative wields power. Now, for the time being, Imran Khan is in jail. His party, which had actually won, is sitting in opposition. They are in power only in one state. But what it has done is to break the legitimacy of Pakistan Army. You recall the 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 riots
Yeah, of May
and the
9th. Yeah,
ransacking of the Lahore Corps Commander's residence.
correct.
These riots took place in Punjab,
Yeah.
which is the main source of recruitment of Pakistan Army. So the army's legitimacy, which was earlier challenged by Pashtuns, by Baloch, by Sinds, but they or Muhajirs, but they were not
Yeah.
not the majority. It's Punjab which is the 60% of the population. So army's legitimacy is being challenged today, even within Punjab.
So you
even-
have that, and then India hitting these places in Punjab, the air bases in Punjab, the terror hubs in Punjab, Murid Ke, Bahawalpur, etc. What does that do? I mean, at some point, again, I come back to that. At some point, doesn't it snap, or does Munir just, lord over all of these contradictions and all of these questions around his authority? And
this is going to snap.
It
this this is a unstable balance, to use a phrase from physics, and this is going to, at some point there's going to be collapse, and the collapse is being driven by economic forces also, which is not something army is used to controlling.
correct.
Pakistan follows, July to June budget cycle. So the New Year's budget is going to be presented on 10th June. But some of the outlines are already
In place.
available in public domain. And what has come out is that the development budget, which is already meager, is going to be further slashed to half. And about 1 trillion Pakistani rupees are going to, which will be slashed from the development budget, will be diverted to
The defense.
the defense. So this is going to lead to progressive, diminution of resources for education, health, the
Correct.
basics,
Okay.
and welfare system. And eventually it's going to, at some stage, the people will rise. You saw the food riots in Pakistan.
All right, Mr. Srivastav, thank you very much for this fascinating conversation. It's a beautiful book that you have taken pains over the last 3 years to articulate. I hope it becomes a bestseller. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
this interview. Thank you.